皆様、こんにちは。ミッキー京子です。今日もオースティンに来ていただいています。今日はですね、彼の体験談を話していただきます。ですね、パッドキャストをどのように始めたのか、そして何をしたのか、で、現在どうなのかっていうことを聞いてみますね。Okay, Austin, thank you so much for coming here again.
Absolutely.
Well, then, um, when did you start doing a podcast?
So we did our first episode back in the beginning of 2020. So two years ago, a little bit more than 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And what's the motivation to start?
sure. So as actually COVID kind of was a big reason why we had to make the shift. And so for us as a company,
Mhm.
we used to rely a lot on being able to meet with people face to face. And COVID changed that, right? And so what we thought was we could connect with people
Yep.
over Zoom
Mhm.
and try and get some of their expertise as a reason for them to want to come and talk to us. So we positioned our podcast as being information about real estate and what's going on in the area that we serve. And so we would then go to the real estate agents that we wanted to work with and say, hey, do you want to come be a guest on our podcast? We want to talk about real estate. So we used it as a business opportunity to try and make connections with people who otherwise weren't working with us to hopefully introduce us to them and build that connection.
So, in another word, COVID prevented you from going out and seeing people face to face. So you started using Zoom to see people. Then you decided to invite somebody to talk about real estate, uh, and then spread out through a podcast. Um, did you know about that before? I mean, were you listening before you started?
So I knew about podcasts and I had listened to maybe one or two episodes of a podcast before, but I mean, I didn't realize that it was as big of a thing as it was. And so I didn't pay attention to it really.
I see. So actually, big thing.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very big thing.
Still, I didn't know anything about it. I never listened to it, so I didn't know. And then, but how did you find it was a big business? I mean, margin, big one. How did you find out?
Well, when we started doing our own podcast, some of the realtors that we were bringing on as guests had their own podcasts. Right. So then they would ask us to go and be on their podcast, or they would take what we had recorded and they would share it out to their audience.
Oh,
So we started realizing that there were more people doing it, right? The thing is, though, because so many people are doing it, it doesn't really carry as much weight in some instances because you may have 1,000 podcasts out there about real estate. And so
yes.
ours is just one of 1,000, right?
Yes.
So that's part of like in the last episode, how I was telling you some people do this because it's their passion, and some people their goal is to make money off of it.
Yes.
Our real goal was not to make money, but it was to use it as a way to build that connection. So in our mind, even if we only had 100 people listen to the podcast, what really mattered was the one person we brought in as the guest
Yes.
who saw that we were having that conversation with them.
Uh, can you tell us exactly what did you do? Did you write some words to talk about, or how? And then, well, it's like an advertisement type of thing, or how did you make it to broadcast?
Sure. So when we were trying to find people to bring on, we were reaching out to them via email. And we were saying, hey, because so let me actually back up and tell you a bit more back to your question on how we started. So we started by going to realtors that we already knew and worked with and asked them to be on the podcast. Because the benefit of that is when we were reaching out to people who didn't know us, we had previous episodes that we can send them.
Yes.
And we could say, here's what we're doing. Do you want to come join? So it wasn't like we were reaching out with nothing to show as far as what the benefit would be. So when we were reaching out to those new people, that was our process.
Mm.
Is we would say, hey, we're our company. We know that you're successful in real estate. Here's an example of a podcast episode we did with this realtor. Do you want to come on and share your expertise? So it wasn't an advertisement as far as reaching out to them. And then the podcast itself wasn't an advertisement because we asked them for it to be informational. We wanted them to share something of benefit that people who were listening were going to learn, not just talk about themselves and why they're the best realtor out there. So what we actually ended up doing is we would create a Word document
Yes.
and we would send it to them and ask them, please put your thoughts out on what topic do you want to speak on, and then give us an outline of what that topic is. So we were letting them drive what the conversation was going to be, but when they sent it back to us, we would actually use it as our guide for leading the conversation through. Yeah.
Well, so you waited until the other party gives you the idea what they want to talk about,
hmm
and then could you accept everything? You didn't have to say, well, we don't want to talk about this, or it. There was no conflict.
There wasn't. The only thing that we sometimes had to figure out is because we wanted the content to be unique. And so when you're talking about one topic like real estate, there's only so much uniqueness that you can talk about, right?
Yeah.
So we may have had a previous realtor that already spoke on something that a new guest was wanting to come on and talk about. So we would just let them know when we got the outline back. We've already had a conversation on this topic. Is there something you could do to make it a bit different so that it's unique to this conversation?
Wow, that's interesting. It's instead of producing from your own,
hmm
actually, you could utilize the other party's idea, and then you can just expand by talking. So, somebody came next to you, and then did you have a conversation?
hmm
Mm,
So we did some episodes in our office
mm,
and we had a big round table. And
mm.
it was at the beginning, someone else who worked for the company, he and I would sit on one side and the
Yes.
realtor would sit on the other. It
Mm.
was kind of like a round table discussion.
Well, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Sure.
but you that was recorded, right?
hmm
So there are several mics.
Yes, we had three.
Oh, okay, okay. No,
Yeah.
okay. Because usually uh, the mic catches from one side. I thought, okay, so three mics.
Yep.
Okay, so now there are two people,
hmm
you and another person, and then realtor is here. Okay, so how did it go?
It would always go well. I mean, it would be a little bit awkward at the beginning
No,
because
yeah, awkward.
we're just trying to warm them up because they're
Yeah.
walking into an office. They don't know who we are outside of going in email. So it was like the introduction of nice to meet you.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Awkward means before you actually started recording.
hmm
I see, I see. I thought when you start talking, it was awkward.
No. Yeah.
People just get to know each other and then have a chat a little bit.
Yes,
Then you started.
exactly.
And then when you record, what was the recording device? Like a laptop or what was it?
Yeah.
Cell phone or what?
So we had a pretty complicated setup.
Oh.
And so what we had is the three microphones that were set up, and then the microphones were all going into a central device. And then
Yes, microphone. Yes, yes.
and then that central device was going into a computer to actually record it to the computer,
Computer means like laptop.
like a laptop. Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's kind of hard to explain without looking at a picture of what it is, but just imagine the three microphones going into a box, and the box then goes into the computer, and on the box is where you have the knobs to adjust the volume and everything like that.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Now I understand. So three microphones, and then there's a box,
hmm
and then it's connected. Then you can adjust the volume,
hmm
and then there is a cord to a laptop
Yep,
connected,
exactly.
and then the laptop records everything.
Exactly.
Then, for instance, if you want to stop, can you just stop? Or if you stop, you have to do it again. Now, this one,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to edit. Like the film,
Mm-hmm.
I can't do to make it shorter or add, or I can't do it. So if there's a mistake and then if I stop here now,
Mm-hmm.
I have to do it again from the beginning.
Yeah.
How was yours?
So we didn't have to start or stop for mistakes. If there was a mistake, we would say, okay, let's just go back and without actually stopping the computer, we would just tell the person restart with what you were trying to say. But we had a special system that we used to edit the podcast where we were able to cut out the mistakes or like the beginning or the end if there was a lot of noise, like people were picking up their headphones, which that's also something worth mentioning. So we had three microphones,
Mm,
and then each person had their own set of headphones so they could hear their own voice, but then hear the other two people. So sometimes at the beginning or the end of the video, there would be a bunch of noise because people were putting on the headphones, moving the microphone. And so the system we used, we were able to cut all of that out and just have the content. That system also let us put in intro music and an intro picture. So we had music leading up to the podcast starting, and then it would show our faces and we'd start recording the audio from there.
I see.
Yeah.
You know, you say very easily, but didn't you have to learn all these things technically?
Yeah. The hardest thing was learning the system. Yeah.
Yeah. And editing,
And editing. Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do.
It's tough. It's not easy. Yeah.
See, even just making one filming,
Mm-hmm.
it was totally.
Yeah. No, it's tough, and you go and you try and Google to find out how to do it, and you could spend hours just going through videos trying to learn.
Yeah, that's right. So, about the editing,
Mm-hmm.
how did you learn? Through YouTube or how, somebody taught you or?
Yeah, it was through YouTube. So the program that I use, so the other person who was doing it with me,
Mm,
I would edit the audio, he would edit the video, and then we'd put it together. So the program I used for the audio was called Adobe Audition, and then
mm.
he was using Adobe Premiere to edit the video.
Oh,
So we were able to go to YouTube and look up Adobe Audition, how do I, and then I would find a video on how to do it.
and when you watch the YouTube, could you just follow what to do?
For the most part, there are some good videos out there. Yeah. Yeah, there are some good videos out there.
And then, well, maybe because everything is going on in English,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the reasons. But it's not just the language itself. I just couldn't have the concept.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt very difficult. But if I keep watching, maybe I can learn.
I think so.
I guess, yeah.
I think part of the problem is a lot of these programs are overwhelming. They have way more options than you'll ever need.
Right.
So I think, especially when you're talking about podcasts,
Mm.
you're going to be doing the same thing for each episode when it comes to editing.
Mm.
So if you watch the YouTube videos enough times to
Yeah.
understand those few things, you don't need to worry about anything else in that system. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I shouldn't give up, I
No.
guess.
No, not at all.
And well, your partner, he or she knew about the image. I mean, audio. No, you did audio part,
Right,
and then he did the image part.
right.
So did he have to learn too?
He did.
Both of you are very smart.
That's what we think, but I don't know.
Well, then, did you expect that it takes time to master everything before you invite somebody? Could you expect that?
I think it depends on well, in a way, yes. But in the other way, you can try and make everything perfect, and
Mm.
it's still not going to be perfect until you actually try it. So with the first few guests that we brought on, like I said, they were people we knew and we had already worked with.
Yeah.
So they understood that this was our brand new thing and that there were going to be some issues. So they were very patient with us.
Oh.
So that's what I would recommend when getting started is if you're going to bring other people in, bring people that you know because they're going to be patient with you and they're going to work through the process with you.
Yeah, you're very lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you know somebody,
hmm
and this person could be like a irritable or whatever, but the person that came first or second, they were very patient.
Yes.
That's good.
Yep.
Yeah. So, please tell me exactly how many times did you feel uncomfortable? I mean, to do that.
I think the only times that it was uncomfortable is if, we tried to keep the podcast to a certain length.
Yes.
So our
Wow.
goal, yeah, our goal was between 30 to 40 minutes. Right.
Long time.
Right. And that's the thing is we wanted it to be long enough to have good content, but not too long to where people wouldn't listen because they would tune out after, 30 minutes. So the only part that sometimes got awkward was if somebody was talking and it was going on and on. And we had some that went over an hour. And I mean, this is somebody we want to get business from, so we weren't going to tell them to stop because we wanted their business, right? Or the other awkward part would be if we felt like we had already covered everything in 10 minutes and our goal was to get to 30. Now we're trying to fill conversation in when it wasn't really planned. So I think that was the most awkward thing was like each person's different and is trying to figure out how to make it an experience for them as well.
I see.
Yeah.
Austin, I have
Sure.
to stop and then can I continue?
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you. One moment, please. Oh, everybody, goodbye this time.